All right, I want to welcome you. I'm Paul DeZiel from District 3, and this is the Public Works meeting on 2/14/22, otherwise known as Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's, everybody. Roll call, I think it's just Sarah is here, correct?
I am here.
And we've got our wonderful Public Works staff and our city engineer, so I think we're good to go. Our first order of business is approval of minutes from the January 10th, 2022 Public Works Committee meeting.
And I reviewed those and I'll make the motion to pass the prior minutes, please.
I would second that motion. Is there any discussion?
I did not have any. Did you?
I do not. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries on the minutes. We also have a second set of minutes. They are from the January 20th, 2022 Public Works Committee meeting.
Yep. And I would make a motion to pass the minutes from the January 20th meeting as well.
I would second that. Any discussion? Good to go. Let's take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes have carried from both of the January meetings. Comments and suggestions from citizens present. It's a little difficult on Zoom, but if there's any, I do see a few people on here. If there's anything that you want to say, if you guys want to hop in, I think there's a little hand button too you can use on the bottom. Am I right? These guys might be on for other reasons, so. Anybody want to hop on to public comment? Okay, I think we will pass on public comment. I guess later, again, if people zoom in and have comments, we can work them into the meeting. We'll go on to new business, section 5A, discussion and possible action on federal infrastructure funding strategy. I think your sound is a little bit off, Dean.
I can't hear you, Dean.
Mike, you maybe want to give us an update while he's trying to get on sound. Do you have any background for this piece?
Or if there's something else that Mike was going to present on, we could switch to that maybe.
Yeah,
too.
that's a good idea. We can juggle a little bit.
Okay, that's fine. You want to do 5E? Yeah, discussion possible action to approve the 2022-2029 Public Works Equipment Replacement Plan.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's jump to 5E and then we'll come back. Yep.
Okay. So 5E, as we begin to, I kind of alluded to this at our previous Finance Committee and Council meeting, as we begin to put together the CIP this upcoming fall, I wanted to take a look at our current and future equipment needs. And I consulted with our field foreman, Kevin Soltis, as far as what he foresees being a priority over the next several years. And from that, we put together a plan basically from this year out to 2029. Included in that is replacements for plow equipment, wheel loaders, so on and so forth, based on kind of our general rule of thumb of when we start to look at turning over the equipment, just because there's kind of that sweet spot where we still get a lot of value for that piece of equipment. And it's not so far out that we're having to put a bunch of money into it, right? That's kind of the goal, is to kind of hit that sweet spot and turn that equipment before we're dumping in money into these pieces to maintain them. So let's get down to the spreadsheet. And I don't have to walk through this verbatim, but generally, you know, I try to stick around that 350 to 400,000. Obviously, there's some years where it might be a little higher, might be a little lower, but try to average them out. There's also some opportunities to purchase some pieces of equipment from the stormwater utility, just because the primary use of those pieces of equipment are for stormwater purposes, including, you know, trailers for our skid steer, the street sweeper, a vac truck for backing out all of our storm systems, so on and so forth. So there is, in the spreadsheet, I did indicate that with just a simple SU next to that piece of equipment. Other than that, mowers, plows, alley trucks, replacing pickups. And like I said, on the right-hand side, I identify which piece of equipment we would replace with those ones that are identified in the plan. So we're able to trade in or sell a piece of equipment, offset some of those costs too. So with that being said, just open it up to any questions. Obviously, this isn't set in stone if you approve this tonight. There are times where a piece of equipment will begin to fail, either sooner than we would typically see it fail, where we would have to replace it. But at least this gives us a general idea of what we're looking to accomplish over the next, like I said, next several years.
Thanks, Mike. Any comments, Sarah? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, thanks so much. This gives us a really good pulse on things. And like I had pulled you aside at the last meeting, I'm really good with all of this, just with the little caveat as technology evolves and we have more options to explore hybrid or things maybe coming down the pipeline as electric, that would be, if that's an availability, that we would at least look into considering that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mike, I wanted to say nicely done. I think it makes sense, and I appreciate that. As I was looking over the sheet, it really seemed like you were trying to balance out as best as possible, what those costs would be, so we're not overwhelmed in one particular year. So I think that's an important aspect of that plan too. So.
And Mike, would you just please pass on our thanks to Kevin as well in his work for this?
Absolutely. Yeah, he makes a lot of phone calls for me and gets some accurate pricing on quotes. Obviously, it changes from month to month or week to week now, but at least we kind of get a general sense of what it's going to be. So I will pass that along. Thank you, Sarah.
So then I'll make the motion to approve the 2022 through 2029 Public Works Equipment Replacement Plan, with the understanding that if hybrid or electric become available on any of these options, that we would explore those as well.
I would second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Dean, do you have sound back at all?
No, you're on mute.
I'm gonna say that. That's enough.
All right. Thanks. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
We're gonna
Sorry about that.
That's
I don't
okay.
know what's going on with my laptop sound, so sorry for the snafu there.
Dean, I think we're gonna go back to 5A, if that's okay. Discussion and possible action on federal infrastructure funding strategy. If you want to give us the background on that.
Yep, that sounds great. I'm going to stop my video because I'm going to put my phone down so I can read through my stuff. So hope that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So talking about the federal infrastructure bill, we just recently received guidance as to how the federal infrastructure now law, which they've acronymed as BIL, B-I-L, is being shared with municipalities, particularly in the state of Wisconsin. So there's two different, programs involved with the BIL law in the state of Wisconsin. The first is fiscal year 2022, and the second is fiscal year 23 to 26. So for fiscal year 2022, which is federal fiscal year, so their fiscal year 2022 ends on September 30th, just for what it's worth. So all of the federal funds for federal year 2022 have to be essentially spoken for by the end of September, which means that if you want to take advantage of construction funding for 2022, then you have to have all your plans approved, specifications and estimates done and approved, so that the money essentially gets earmarked for that project by the end of September. I'm getting feedback from somebody on the on the Zoom there. So that being said, because the 2022 timeline is really short, the projects that they are shooting for are going to be simple repaving projects, essentially, ones that don't require any additional right-of-way, don't require anything complicated, really. And then fiscal years 23 through 26 are kind of opened up to more complicated, or, bigger projects. So you see the list in your issue sheet. You can kind of see that we've identified a few roads for repaving fiscal year 2022, and then kind of more reconstruction work in the years beyond. And that is to take best advantage of the funding as we've been told it's available. So applications for the 2022 projects are due by April 1st, and then the years 2023 to 2026 projects are due by June 1st. So that's all coming up very quickly. So we need to decide on which projects we're going to apply for very shortly. And then make any arrangements necessary to be able to get those applications in, and then the plans together and all that good stuff, so that we can take advantage of the money. So not included in this program is the federal RAISE program, which is the program that we've applied for funding for redesigning Carmichael Road north of 94. That's a specific federal program. It's not administered by the state, so it's a different, essentially, pot of money. So we're not talking about that one right now. We'll talk about that very soon, actually, for Carmichael Road and then Hagen Street Bridge as well, at the council meeting on Monday. So there's also a new program. So generally these infrastructure money from the federal government and the states are only allowed to be used for essentially our busier streets, our collector and arterial network streets. WSDOT this year has started a program called STP Local, which allows some of this funding to be used on locally designated streets. So, and specifically streets that are not collectors or arterials, there's a certain pot of money set aside for that. Again, it's pretty much the same requirements. If we wanted to take advantage of the STP Local funding, it would have to be for repaving projects in 2022, but in 2023 and beyond, it could be for things like reconstructing streets, that kind of thing. So we've been talking to our partners, we're talking with in-city staff. We are kind of under the impression that applying for as many projects as possible is obviously within reason is the best strategy to ensure that we're able to maximize the amount of outside funding that we're able to receive. Obviously, we're not going to get all the projects that we apply for, but any amount of projects we do get are going to be a really big benefit to the city and the city's infrastructure. And as we've talked about for a long time now, our city's infrastructure is in a lot of need for improvements. So that being said, I wanted to bring this up tonight. Wanted to get the committee's thoughts on the projects on the list, ones that we want to pursue. Are there any missing on that list that we want to pursue, any that we should take off, anything like that? And we're, again, looking for a recommendation tonight for those issues, and then we'll be discussing this at the February 21st meeting so that we can make decisions and move forward with grant applications. If we are successful in getting these grants, that's generally 80-20 match, 80% federal government funds, 20% local funds. So with that type of funding split, it's obviously very good for us to only have to pay 20% of the project costs. So yeah, I think I've said all I need to probably for that. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to throw them my way.
Thanks, Dean. Sarah, anything jump out at you?
No, I was happy to see that Fillmore was mentioned on there. I know that is an area of concern. I'm just getting the lay of the land, but I think these are roads I've heard that, heard from folks. So this makes sense. I'm grateful that you guys are working on these grant opportunities. I imagine it's a ton of work. So thank you for your efforts on that. Paul, please add on.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for the work. I think a lot of it is really well laid out, Dean, so I appreciate that. I was very happy to see the 11th Street from Wisconsin to Colonial Drive and adding sidewalk or the trail connection. I think I've been out a lot the last 5 weeks here, door knocking and talking to people, and there's a lot of desire for that sidewalk down on 11th. So I think that would be a huge thing for our community. The one thing I would maybe add, Dean, is, and I don't know how this would work with the school district, but also people are really wanting sidewalks around EP Rock Elementary for safety for kids in the morning, for just snowplow reasons, other reasons like that. So if there's any way we could work in a sidewalk plan for around EP Rock. I know part of it has a sidewalk, but it doesn't go basically all the way around the school. So, and again,
Right.
I think we'd have to talk to the school district. So I guess I don't know exactly, if we can make that decision. That's not really our.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, Paul. I just, with the guidance we received from WSDOT thus far, probably would not be a project we want to pursue for fiscal year 22 because there may be some right-of-way impacts involved with adding the sidewalk around the school. Even if it is a willing partner, so to speak, if you have federal money tied up in it, it can take quite a while to get all those boxes checked and I's dotted and T's crossed for that stuff.
Gotcha.
And also fiscal years 23 through 26, there's a program which we've applied for in the past for those CP Rock sidewalks. It's called the Transportation Alternatives Program. That program is going to have additional money in those 23 through 26 years. That TAP is what it's called, is specifically for non-motorized transportation network improvements. So that would be a really good opportunity for trying to get that funding for that project with the second solicitation, so to speak.
Gotcha. That makes total sense. Yep. Just to keep it in the hopper, I guess is what I'm saying, just to have it on our minds. And if we'd be able to tap into TAP, so to speak, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only comment I had. I don't have anything else on that.
Then I'm happy to make a motion directing staff to develop grant applications for the projects listed in the agenda.
I would second that. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries to direct staff. I see that my constituent Paul Malik is on, so I would like to jump to that agenda item to make sure we respect his time tonight. So let us jump down to 5G, which is the discussion and possible action regarding installation of additional speed signs on 17th Street. And Paul, do you maybe want to talk first just a little bit about what you've observed? You're good? I don't think we can hear you right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, we can, yeah.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Now you can?
Yep.
Yep. I get up every morning, 5:30. I have the opportunity to overlook 17th Street, and from 5:30 till probably 7:30, there is nobody that does 25 miles an hour on this. What worries me the most is you have kids on the corner of Summer and 17th that are standing in the dark on the street waiting for a bus. There are no speed limit signs from Laurel to Ward Avenue going south. There's not one speed limit sign saying 25 miles an hour. Coming the other direction, there's a sign at Ward Avenue and nothing again to head down into past into Stone Pine. Nobody respects the speed here. I'll be shocked. I mean, when they last had a speed trap up here, there were speeds of 45 miles an hour being clocked throughout the day. And something's going to happen, and people don't respect the speed up here. It's a busy because of the school, people going to high school, running late. Everybody goes way too fast in this town.
Mhm.
I don't know if we can get a sign that flashes. You have to do something to get their attention.
Mhm. Thanks, Paul, for observing that and kind of bringing it to our attention today too. Dean, I think you had prepared some thoughts in the issue sheet. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure if it was the same constituent or a different constituent, but we've been contacted in the past about issues of speed on 17th Street. The police department did count traffic on 17th in October of last year. In the issue sheet, it shows exactly how many people are going, what speeds, and that kind of thing. So just a few highlights from that. The average speed, so half people are going over the speed, half people are going under the speed. The average speed was 29 miles per hour. So over half people are speeding on the street out there. I don't have it broken down as to what time of day people are speeding, that kind of thing, but it's just kind of the average overall. The maximum speed clocked out there is 68 miles per hour, so that's not good. Obviously, you're gonna have crazy people going crazy speeds no matter what, but that's a lot. And then to the constituents' point, there are quite a few people going, in excess of, especially 35 miles per hour. And as I think I've shared before, if you have an area where people walking or pedestrians are present, in a residential neighborhood, that kind of thing, you really don't want people going more than 20, 25 miles per hour, because if there is, heaven forbid, collision, the higher the speed of the car, the more likely that person who is getting hit by the car is to suffer severe injuries or death. So that's obviously not something that we want. Regards to essentially the solution for slowing people down out there. So I guess to summarize, I do see a speed problem on 17th Street. I'll just say that right now. As far as the solutions go, we have not really found that just installing a sign has really impacted traffic speeds very much. We've posted speed limit signs. We even lowered the speed limit on, say Oak Street behind the school and Chestnut Street, down to 15 miles per hour because of all the school bus traffic and stuff. And in fact, before and after, traffic speeds were actually higher after we posted the sign. So obviously a sign by itself doesn't exactly help things very much. Not to say that it would be harmful. So, I'm not supportive of putting up a 25 mile per hour sign. I just don't know to what effectiveness it's going to be to really get people to slow down out there. Geometric changes are more apt to slow people down. Some things, obviously, geometric changes are a lot more expensive. So that would have to be a consideration that we'd have to figure out. The nice thing, going back to our last.
Sorry, Dean. Are you saying, so geometric, I just want to make sure we know what you're talking about. Are you talking about like a little median or something in the middle? Is that what you mean by?
Yeah, there's a wide variety of things we could look at, like a pedestrian refuge median crossing 17th Street at Summer Street for the kids. That would be one option. You could look at, I'll say the B word for my bump outs. Obviously, to slow people down by kind of reducing the size of the road is more effective for slowing people down. The more physical changes you make to the road, the better compliance you have with slower speeds. That would be kind of some of the things that we'd be looking at. And the other things we could look at out there is if there are kids that are waiting for a school bus, that there really aren't very good sidewalks in that neighborhood. We could look at adding some more good sidewalk crossings and, good places for the kids to be off the street waiting for the school bus, that kind of thing. To kind of go back to our last discussion on the federal infrastructure stuff, we do have 17th Street on there as a potential project for the first year, which, if we're already going to have a project out there now, would be a good time to think about some of those things to increase safety for everybody out there. I think that would be a good way to work together with another thing that we have to do with, with the pavement out there. But anyway, so I guess that's my rambling way to say I think we should look broader at some other things out there compared to just thinking about the speed limit sign right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Mike, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, let me just piggyback on a couple of things that both Paul and Dean had mentioned. Obviously, Paul, you kind of hit the nail on the head. We have a speed problem in the city, and 17th Street is the only street that we have received complaints on with high speeds. And a lot of that attributes to the way that our streets were designed, when they were put in. A lot of them are wide streets in residential neighborhoods, and people see them as raceways more than, being in a residential area. And that's where we're seeing these high speeds. I mean, that's where Dean is kind of getting at with the geometrical, changes, whether it's narrowing the streets. You look in the Holder historical part of the city where Sarah's district is, and you get a couple cars parked on each side. I mean, those lanes are tight and people aren't racing down them as much compared to, on the outskirts or in Paul's district there. So, obviously I could support putting up a speed limit sign. I don't know if we would see the desired changes. The other thing too is in the previous agenda item, we do have repaving of that street in our grant application. I don't know, Dean, if we could maybe include some changes to some of those geometrics.
Yeah, we could look at that for sure. We definitely would want to make sure that any changes we do make wouldn't run afoul of the requirements for the project, especially in that first year, to be simple, so to speak, like without having to do stuff with right away and that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot we could do out there that would be within the existing right of way that we can certainly take a look at. And those, funding for sidewalks, funding for curb changes, funding for median islands, that's all eligible for federal funding for programs like this. So I would definitely want to consider that as we develop the applications and plans for that project.
Sarah, any thoughts?
Dean and Mike, I appreciate this. I definitely think this should be on our list to do. Those plans that you're talking about are a little ways out, and it sounds like the problem is now. I'm wondering what you recommend we can do now to help drive down those speeds. I mean, we've got school going on for another, gosh, I should know, 5 months, 3-4 months. What can we do immediately to make it safer?
Go ahead, Mike.
Enforcement.
Oh, okay.
Is there, Mike, is is it Hudson PD that owns the kind of the radar deal where you drive and it shows you your speed? Has that been shown to slow traffic as we've been using that in different neighborhoods?
Yeah, it's been popped up. They got a speed trailer. We use it on 9th Street. I know we used it up on Oak and Chestnut behind the high school that Dean was referring to. It has a small effect, obviously, when it's out there, but it can't stay out there forever. And even the digital speed signs that we have on Vine Street or other areas of the town, after a while, people become accustomed to them, right? For the first maybe few months to a year, you see an effect, but then people always tend to kind of revert back to their original habits. And so, a lot of these issues, obviously, you start writing a bunch of tickets, the word gets around in a hurry. But obviously our PD department is stretched thin, and, there's not a lot of cops out on the beat at any particular time. So it's kind of hit or miss. And, that's been a struggle since I've been here is signage versus enforcement, so on and so
Mhm.
forth.
Mike, do you know what the cost is for a speeding ticket in Hudson?
Never got one, so I don't know.
I don't either. But I'm saying, I guess maybe that's something we could bring up with Hudson PD too, if that needs to be adjusted or increased to give people more incentive to not speed. That may be something that gets their attention too. I guess I'm thinking, I'm liking what Sarah's saying. I see a long-term and a short-term here. I think the short-term solution I'd like to see is, I would like to see 2 speed signs, one northbound, one southbound. I guess I'd leave it up to Public Works staff in terms of where, but I think the concern with the summer crossing in the school is totally legitimate. So I think they have to be somewhere on those, sides of slowing that traffic down there. And then that's the short term, I think. And then, but the long term, I think, is what you're talking about when we do 17th, the geometric changes. And then also, I think we should just put in for Hudson PD to see if we can get that, even for a few days or a week or something, get that, the radar piece going, just to raise people's awareness. Cause I think that does raise people's awareness of how, I think a lot of people speed without knowing it. If that's a fair, I don't know if that's a fair statement, but I think people do that and they don't realize, hey, I'm going 35 instead of going 25. But I think that radar gun is really helpful to give them something back. So Sarah, did you have a comment? Once I get it.
Well, I was just going to say, when the construction project was going on Highway 35, and traffic was rerouted to 3rd Street, that flashing light really did seem to draw some attention. And I understand it can't be there all the time, but I do think to raise that awareness, that is a good visual. I understand it's a temporary solution, but these are kind of just to help us get through until hopefully we can address it better long term.
Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And the other thing too is, Dean, do you remember or do you recall from our research and projects behind Oak Street when we changed the speed limit sign there on school zones? Is 17th Street too far away from EP Rock to be considered a school zone, or because there's that crossing there, can it be?
The crossing can be a school zone because it's a route to the school for walking, designated route. As far as, posting speed limit all the way along 17th Street, say from Coulee to Laurel, the North Laurel intersection, that would probably be outside of the school zone applicability, so to speak.
I was just kind of thinking, you see in other parts of or other communities where they have the school zone speed limit and it's a flashing yellow bulb up top, right? But obviously that only occurs periodically throughout the day during kind of that normal morning rush hour, and then that afternoon when school lets out. That doesn't solve Paul's problem when people are flying down the road at 5:30 in the morning. Nothing will be flashing at that time. So I think, like I said, we can add a southbound speed limit sign just south of Laurel. We can look to contact PD for increased enforcement, have them put out their trailer. I think that's kind of.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What if you just put a stop sign on the south of Laurel where it comes onto Summer or on to 17th? I know that's kind of a drastic measure. They'd have to drive 2 blocks and stop, and then turn around and drive another block to get to Summer.
Yeah, we've done that in other areas. Yeah, and what we see with some of the data when that happens, Dean, you could probably back me up on this, is you actually see increased speeds because people pull up the stop sign, and all of a sudden they'll gun it, 50 miles an hour to catch up. You know what I'm saying, Paul? Mm-hmm. So it almost has a reverse effect of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off that a little bit. If you put up a stop sign in a place that doesn't have a lot of traffic from all legs, you'll start to see people, running stop signs. Well, that stop sign in particular, And obviously we don't want that to cause a problem with the installation of the stop sign as well. We could do a study on one of those intersections through there to see if there is enough traffic to, it's called warrants, to find out if there's enough traffic to trigger, a stop sign installation. We could look at doing that if the committee and council wants to do that. That's just the I don't know what to say. The reason why you don't see stop signs up all over the place is if we proliferate stop signs too much, then they tend to cause people to ignore them, and that's obviously a bad thing too.
So Mike, do we need a motion on this, or technically do we need to pass something for the getting the southbound speed sign going?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to install the southbound speed limit sign installation in regards to the speed trailer or enhanced enforcement. That's just something that staff can handle internally.
Okay, gotcha.
Do you want me to make that motion?
I'll make this one. I'd like to move to put a speed sign up southbound on 17th, somewhere in that vicinity, south of Laurel, and I guess it'd be north of Summer, somewhere in the area. That seems like the best location. That's my motion.
I'm sorry that my dog is barking in the background, but I second that. And I want to thank Paul for bringing that concern forward. So second that.
Yes.
Yeah, one more thing before you vote. Obviously, probably won't go up until late March, early April when the frost comes out of the ground. So we don't have to hammer a post through frost. So it might be a month or two before the sign actually gets installed. So just want to make everybody aware of that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And again, I think that long-term solution, once we work on 17th, is in our head now. So Paul, thank you for bringing that forward. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, just got one more question. I mean, does it do any good to change the color of the sign to make it neon or anything like that? I mean, because you drive down the street, nothing jumps out at you anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe I can handle that. So if you change the speed limit sign, well, I should say you can't change the speed limit sign to any color other than black and white due to federal law. But what you could do is you could put a neon orange little, they call it plaque above, kind of to catch people's attention to what the message is on that sign. So that's something we could look at doing, on top of that new speed limit sign.
That's a great
Does that
idea.
make sense?
Especially if it's new, it's going to people are going to, you're going to want people to see that. So,
yep.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. We are moving on to item 5B, discussion and possible action on developing an ADA transition plan for the city of Hudson.
Okay. So you guys, well, Paul in particular, may remember back when I started here in late 2019, I brought this up as the city of Hudson doesn't have an ADA transition plan. ADA standing for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a federal law that requires us to provide accessible facilities for people with physical or other disabilities, particularly with walking or rolling around town. So in order to develop that transition plan, we have to, do some things. Transition plan essentially just it gets us on record saying that we are going to make changes to make our facilities more accessible. In particular, in this case, the facilities for for getting around town, our public infrastructure more accessible for people with physical or other disabilities. There's a few things that have to be in the plan. It has to, we have to provide opportunity for people to participate in it, and by submitting comments, we have to provide a schedule for, providing some targets for, getting to compliance at some point. Have to have an inventory done, which we've already essentially done for our curb ramps, to identify those obstacles that limit the accessibility. And then we have to identify somebody responsible for implementation of the plan. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's a lot of stuff in it that's very specific, and a lot of stuff in it that's very vague, which is really frustrating. There's with the development of this transition plan, I would like to go a little bit beyond the minimum, so to speak, of just telling people we're developing this plan, and then we've suddenly developed it and don't have as many people involved in understanding the accessibility problems in our community, that kind of thing. So I wanted to suggest a more robust public engagement plan. I'd like to have a kind of an informational meeting for anybody who's interested, just kind of presenting what the Americans with Disabilities Act is and how the city of Hudson is looking to meet the requirements. And then I really want to do like a walking tour, walking in quotes, because if you're not able to walk, at least you can roll around in your wheelchair or something like that. A tour of our pedestrian infrastructure, in particular pointing out some things that are not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act and why they're not, showing how people interact with our infrastructure system that people who are able-bodied might not even understand, how people are disadvantaged in walking places, that kind of thing. And then having a public hearing during a city council meeting. Another reason I bring this up again is that with this federal infrastructure stuff, we have to have a transition plan adopted by September if we're successful in getting those grant funds. So that's important. Obviously, we don't want to jeopardize our funding, but we also feel that it's something that we're long overdue for. So if you have any questions or comments on that proposed public engagement structure, that would be fantastic. I'll leave it up to the committee to talk about that. And then we would like a motion to direct staff to begin development of this transition plan as described in the issue sheet.
So a few things. Thank you so much. I am grateful that you're bringing this forward. I'm sad that we're behind the schedule, but I'm glad we're getting ourselves caught up. One of the things I'm just thinking about is just even hearing you talking about the walking tour, let's even take that walking part of that out of there. In the quotations. Thought that might be a good thing. I'm also wondering if reaching out to the aging and, it's like the ARDC, the Department for Aging and Disabilities through the county, if they could maybe help us get this message out to folks in the city of Hudson. So I am all in favor of this and would like to fast forward it if any way possible. I understand that's not, but I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, just to give you a little background, we were going to get this going and kind of COVID slammed the door on us, doing a lot of this stuff with public engagement. So we're reviving it now. So
thank you. Thanks for your diligence.
Yeah, I wanted to echo too. I think it's important and long overdue as well, Dean. So I really appreciate your work on this. My only question is the timetable with March, April, May. What I'm wondering is if we should delay that a month for reasons no other than, I should just say it, just because of the weather. I don't know. I don't know with winter if the going around in April, you just never know with the weather. So I'm just wondering if you want to roll that back a little bit to April, May, June, and still make that September deadline, just because I'd hate to see it, people gathered and maybe they're not able to, who knows what happens in April, you might have some big storm or something. So I'm
Sure,
just
no,
thinking
I
it might be a little easier just logistically, just to push it back a month. I think you'd have better odds of being successful with the tour, and also have more, opportunity to advertise it, get the
Mhm.
word out too. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. Just a little bit behind why I put the schedule in there like that. I was hoping that if we could get something adopted by the time that those applications are due for the federal year 23 through 26 projects, that's June 1st. And so if we had something adopted by June 1st, I think that would be awesome. I don't know that it's going to be like a make or break thing on that application to have a transition plan. I was just kind of hoping to show that, we've got our stuff done, so you should select us for our projects here. But I don't know that that's going to be necessarily a checkbox on the application or anything like that. So,
Well, I think it also shows that the city is serious about doing it, and I think that can only help with the grant application. So I guess I'm going to walk back a little bit what I said then in terms of that June deadline. Maybe just do the tour in like as late of April as possible, I guess.
Sure,
Or
that makes sense.
I guess that would just be my thought.
Or maybe you have a rain date picked or something, like poor weather date, so you have plan A and then plan B.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
And Dean, you're looking for a motion tonight for approval or directing staff, right?
Directing staff to be in development. Yep.
So I'll make that motion to, I would request a motion to direct staff to begin development of an ADA transitional plan, basically using the public engagement process described in issue sheet.
And I can second that.
Any discussion?
I think we've done it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for that work on that, Dean.
Yeah.
Jumping back and forth on my screen, so give me a second here.
Oh, it's okay.
I think we're on item C, 5C, discussion and possible action on the city's engineering consultant pool.
Yeah, so a little bit of background. So the city currently has agreements adopted with engineering firms SCH and Bolton & Mank for engineering services. Those were adopted in 2014. A little bit further back, the city has traditionally used a number of consultants for various things for decades until sometime in the early 2000s. The city used Bonus Draw, which is now Stantec, for essentially everything they did for engineering services. And then for a little while, the city was using Foth, which is the engineering firm that's doing our boat launch design right now. And then in 2014, we adopted this current agreement with SCH and Bolton & Mank for engineering services. It's been, 8 years now since these agreements were adopted. Obviously utilized them many times, but we felt that it might be a good time now to look at those agreements again, just to see if we're getting what we want out of our engineering consultants. I did throw a few bullet points on the issue sheet about some things that I see that could be better about how we're currently structured with our engineering consultants. The other thing that I want to say too is that with these engineering consultants, if you select a company, companies rarely do everything exceptionally well, right? They might be really good at doing construction inspection, but really not great at doing planning for construction or something like that. And we found that even with our two consultants that we currently use, that there is a bit of that going on as well. So if we do restructure this, I'd like to kind of more go towards being able to select people who we know do a good job on project, whatever project, focus that we're doing. So if there's somebody that's we know does a really good job on designing a city street, that we could select that person rather than an entire company, if that makes sense. There's not, in particular, I'd say this because there's not a lot of, engineers that are very, in my mind anyway, really good at thinking multimodally and, not designing for, cars first all the time, that kind of thing. I think there's a specific niche of engineers that have that multimodal focus that I want to make sure that we're getting into doing more work in the city of Hudson. So, and regardless, I think it's just a good practice to, over a period of time, just revisit the agreements and whatnot that we've been under for a while. So just wanted to get any initial feedback on that proposal, any perceived issues that anybody's noticed that we should be thinking of, and then looking. No formal action required. I just kind of want to have that discussion and see if the committee agrees with that.
Sarah, any thoughts?
Thank you. I think this makes great sense. I think it's just a good practice. I think it's great to do it on a more regular basis and really pick the areas of specialties. I appreciate you pulling this up. I'd really like us to, the one comment I hear a lot is about people wanting this to be a more walkable city, more bike friendly. So I just think this, hearing your comment about always thinking about cars first, I think that I'm all in favor of this.
Yep, and I think it's a good idea too as well, Dean. I think it just makes it a more competitive process, I think, which helps the city. I think it also helps the engineering firms to, try to compete a little bit or do a better job to try to get our business, so to speak. So, I think it makes sense. My only question is, does Bolton and Mink SEH, do they kind of know about this? Have we talked to them at all about kind of this, or do they have any?
Yeah,
groundwork
so
with it?
I actually probably over a year ago now kind of said, hey, we're thinking about doing this, and then things came up that made it not a good time to think about it. So I have on a few different occasions mentioned it to them, so they shouldn't be blindsided about this happening, and I think they also should be kind of understanding that over a certain period of time that we should revisit these kind of things to make sure they're functioning correctly.
Sounds good. And you're looking for no formal action, am I right? No formal action
No
required?
no formal action for tonight. Just want to make sure that we were on the same page with that, to think about how to move forward with it.
Yeah, I think so. For what I'm hearing from Sarah and myself.
Great.
Okay. Sorry, we're on 5D, which is discussion and possible action on updating the City of Hudson's construction specification and details.
Okay, I think this is my last one, so hopefully you aren't too bored of listening to me tonight. So in 2019, City of Hudson adopted its current essentially specifications and details. So that essentially governs the way that our streets and utilities and whatnot are constructed. Obviously, back when these were adopted, they were a very large improvement over the previous way of doing things. Essentially, they kind of formalized a lot of things and requirements that city staff had been wanting, but didn't have them, on paper yet. So obviously, this is a very big first step towards essentially modernizing the way we do things here. As the intervening almost 3 years have showed us, is that the documents, there's a few areas that we need more language added or omitted or whatever to clean up some stuff. There's some things in the specifications that don't quite jive with the way I like to, do things as well. So I kind of feel like we should probably spruce that up as well. The biggest thing I think is the way that our specifications are formatted don't align well with the WSDOT standard specifications manual. The reason why that's important is, first of all, contractors that we work with, I'll often work with WSDOT as well. And so if they, are thinking of asphalt pavement is in section 520 or whatever number it is, I don't know. But in WSDOT, it's in section 520, and in our specifications, who knows where it is, that kind of thing. Like to kind of align the best, or align the formatting, I guess, so that everybody's on the same page of where things are and that kind of thing. But also doing it that way will help us to sync up our specifications if we get selected for any of these federal infrastructure projects, because our specifications will need to be mostly in line with the WSDOT specifications for that. So it's kind of a process that we felt like should be happening anyway, but it kind of is a good time with the federal infrastructure stuff to do it now. I also like to add some details in regards to the Americans with Disabilities Act, like we've been talking about. We don't really have sufficient details to get those facilities constructed correctly. We want to make sure that we're very specific on the things that we need to be met, because even recently, in recent projects, we've been finding that our curb ramps and stuff are not constructed according to compliance all the time. And just to give you some perspective, across the river in Minnesota, where I'm used to the way they do things, they are extremely detailed about ADA stuff to make sure that their facilities are getting constructed correctly. And I want to make sure that we are doing the same thing so that we're not missing out on meeting those requirements. Yeah, I think that's it for this. We'll be looking to make those changes before plans and specifications are due for the 2022 project. So that would be sometime this summer. We would hope to roll out those changes and get them approved. So with that, we're looking for a motion to direct staff to update the city's standard specifications and details.
I can make the motion to direct city staff to update the city standard specifications and construction details.
I would second that. Any discussion? I guess my only question, Dean, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I got two things.
Yeah.
First is you're welcome, because I had Dean change the issue sheet to a link of our specs and detail plates. He originally had them in the packet, and it's like 250 pages long, so you're welcome.
Thank you.
Second thing is when Dean does go through and make the changes that he just talked about, how do you want them presented to you? Obviously, you don't have time to read through that large of a document, right? You just want to have him identify those that he changed, or how do you want to see that come back?
Well, I guess that also fits my question too, Mike. Does this go to the full city council for approval, or is it just through Public Works? Like, at what point does this need more approval?
I think we would have to get this approved by city council before they take effect, but I don't know that right now it needs to go to council. I think it would just be for when we do have the revised specifications and details.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess not being an engineer myself, I think as simple format as possible, a summary. I don't know what the whole 250 pages entails and what the changes are, but yeah, some kind of a simplified format in terms of whatever system we're moving to, maybe a description of that.
Sure.
I don't know if it happens in multiple areas or something, but I guess I'm asking for a layman's version, if that makes any sense, of what those changes actually are that would come back to us, and then I think we would pass it on to council. So.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to read all that. It might put you to sleep. If you have trouble sleeping at night, that'd be a good thing for that. But
okay. Well, we have the motion on the floor. Sorry. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dean, for taking that on.
Yeah.
Zinging up the top of my agenda here. We are moving to, we did item E actually, so we're moving to item F. which is discussion and possible action authorizing staff to proceed with plans and specifications for the 2022 street maintenance project.
I'll take this one, give Dean a break, because Dean, you actually do have another one. You're not off the hook yet.
Oh, darn.
Yeah,
That's
so-
right.
Yeah, you got Hagen Street Bridge.
I
So,
forgot about that.
yep. So I'll make this one quick. Obviously, at the beginning of every construction season, staff puts together a plan for upcoming street maintenance project, which includes, our crack filling, seal coating, fog sealing projects. Dean and I took a lap around the city here about a month ago and came up with specific roads that we want to target that we did identify in the CIP to do. Roads include, the major ones are, Grandview Drive, that's a seal coat. Coulee Road, that's a seal coat. O'Keefe is a chip and fog seal. And then we identified some crack filling in the Hillcrest, Carmichael Ridge subdivision. So attaches the map of all the areas that we're looking to hit. We have $350,000 in the capital improvement plan for 2022 to do this work. So just looking for authorization from the Public Works Committee to put together the plan specifications to go out for bid for this project.
And Mike, got it. My only question or just thoughts, so we're clear on it. So some of those roads are good, but just so the public knows, the strategy is you want to keep some of those newer roads in better shape because you get a lot more years if you invest in them now, right? With some of this kind of maintenance as opposed to kind of letting them go.
Yeah, correct. Dean, you want to take that one? I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to answer that.
I was just resting my vocal cords here for.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, there is a pavement life cycle that we like to follow. Obviously, when we're crack filling streets, we want to hit them within that, first 3 years. Whether it's 2, 3, 4, depending upon how many cracks are showing through the road. So that's why, like for the Carmichael Ridge subdivision, that's been paved now for I think 2 going on 3 years. So cracks are starting to show. We want to get those sealed up. And then when it comes to our, overall seal coating process, the benefit that we're going to get is in that, 4 to 6 year window. So we are hitting newer roads with the intent that we keep our best roads in great shape and we replace the rest. So that's kind of why we target, Grandview Drive, which was done back in 2016. So that's 7 years old. We want to hit that with a seal coat. Coulee Road, obviously we did do a mill and overlay on that back in the early 2010s or something like that. So obviously that's due. We don't want to put a seal coat on a road that's 15 to 20 years old because it doesn't adhere correctly because there's polishing of that surface. So you get a lot of raveling or just the material coming off, and that's not good. That's not money well spent. We're looking to try to identify those roads that are kind of in that prime position to put down that material and have it stick and have it preserve that pavement for the longest time possible.
Yeah, just piggyback on that just a little bit. So we target roads that are in the 6, 7, maybe 8 out of 10 rating, just to keep, like you guys were saying, good roads in good shape. Seal coat is a preventative maintenance tactic, so to speak. It's not for roads that are in really rough shape. That would be more free paving or, reconstructing pavement, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very cost-effective way to keep good roads in good shape. We want to make sure that we're doing that so that we don't have to do more costly things later on.
Sounds good. Thank you. And you guys are looking for formal motion, if I'm remembering correctly here.
And I have one quick question. How do we communicate to citizens so they know when these roads are getting done?
Great question, Sarah. You're talking about actually when like the construction is about to happen, that kind of thing, or is it? Yeah. Okay. So just for example, when we did Crestview out, between Hagen Street and Carmichael Road last year, we did send out a letter to all the properties and actually went door to door in a lot of cases to make sure that it got to everybody who needed it, and particularly on Crestview, because that's kind of a important road, but kind of look to do a similar deal for the other streets here, just to make sure people know what's coming. Thankfully, this type of process doesn't require closing the road generally, or that kind of thing, but there are, some delays, that kind of thing for this process.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to make the motion to have our city staff proceed with the development of plans and specifications for the 2022 street maintenance projects.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, sorry, we are going on to G, I believe, yes, 5G, which is the, we did 5G, sorry, we're going on to 5H, discussion and possible action regarding Hagen Street Bridge project design options.
All right, how could I forget this one? It's kind of important. So yeah, as you both know, we've been working with our consultant partners at Strand to identify potential design options for the replacement of the Hagen Street Bridge over on A4 or some other alternative. Because we identify a number of needs out there, some of which are listed on your issue sheet: poor pedestrian bicycle facilities crossing the bridge, large volumes of vehicle traffic using existing bridge. The bridge is only one of two crossings of I-94 in our city, so that's obviously important to have expanded facilities in case you have, say, a crash on the bridge or something happens that restricts the capacity on one bridge or the other. As we'll find out this summer, when the Carmichael Road Bridge is restricted capacity, then the Hagen Street Bridge becomes even more important. And the existing bridge is just really very utilitarian, not really a great gateway feature to our community. So we've come up with 3 different options. I won't go, expound on these in detail because I know both of you were attending one of our public engagement meetings, which thank you for attending. Option 1 is essentially replacing the existing bridge with a wider 5-lane bridge with traffic signals on either side, much like it is today, just essentially with an expanded roadway footprint. We'd also be expanding the path to a 12-foot shared use path on the west side of the bridge. So essentially just making everything wider, including the intersections on either side. Option 2 would replace the existing bridge with a wider bridge, also with that 12-foot shared use path, and then also have single lane roundabouts on both ends of the bridge with a few right turn bypass lanes added. And option 3 would construct a new bridge crossing I-94 west of the existing bridge connecting Coulee to Crestview, essentially downhill from where the existing crossing is right now. And then replacing the traffic signal or replacing the intersection with the roundabout at Crestview and Hagen Street. So obviously you guys both attended the public informational meeting, so you have a lot of that background information as well. For anybody who's listening tonight, the presentation materials are on our city project webpage. The link is on the issue sheet here. So really we're at a point that we need to start discussing preferred alternatives. The reason for that is that in order, again, to go after the federal infrastructure money for this project, we are really in need of having an alternative picked so that we can move forward with doing design and kind of allowing us to best tailor the grant applications for the actual alternative that we're going to pick. It's just a little bit behind the curtain, and I know, Sarah, you were at the meeting on last Wednesday where somebody asked me which one I would recommend. At this point, put me on the spot, that's fine. Kind of we're doing a straw poll with the staff in the office here for the ones that are in the know on the project here. We're kind of waffling between option 2, the roundabouts, and option 3, the west bridge, for what we believe would be a preferred design. A little bit, option 2 would probably be the best for safety at the existing intersections. would provide a more traffic capacity to handle future traffic volumes. Option 3, however, would allow us to have a third bridge over I-94 within the city limits, which would be great. It's also the least costly option of the 3 that we've considered thus far. The consensus is at this point not to recommend option 1, just because of less safety benefits and a high cost. So that being said, I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts as you've been kind of digesting all these options. And if you have any questions that we need to answer before next Monday at City Council, and then I'd love to hear kind of where you guys are at as far as a recommendation for a preferred option to City Council, which is the action we'd like to hear from you tonight, if possible, is provide a formal recommendation to City Council, or recommend, if you guys are split, to recommend a couple different options, if that makes sense. I also included comments received from our public informational meetings to the issue sheet here. We've had some good attendance, which is great. We had some great conversations with the public, both at those meetings and then afterwards. We've had a number of different conversations as well. So that's summarized in the issue sheet as well. So with that, any thoughts, questions, concerns, recommendations?
Go ahead, sir.
You sure? You don't want to go first?
No, and I don't, just so you know, just for what I'm thinking tonight, I don't feel a lot of pressure to have to make a recommendation, because we're 2 people out of the City Council, and the truth is it's going to have to be processed on City Council. So I'm more interested in really questions and kind of like trying to get at, preferences and things. But I don't feel a lot of pressure here to come up with like a decision tonight, if that helps. So
That really does help, because I was concerned with this is a big one. And so I would feel better if there were more people weighing in. But I am happy to share. I have received quite a bit of comments and questions on it, which I think is awesome. And it speaks highly to you guys getting the message out there. I was so excited to see how many people had shown up for that meeting last Wednesday. You 2 did a fantastic job. I'm always impressed, and I'm happy to know that you work in our city. But when I see you in action like that, I'm like, we got good people doing important work. So thank you. I mean, you guys totally have the disposition and the ability to take super, super complex issues and make them understandable. So hats off to you. Questions. Can you help me understand with the roundabout options for walkers and bikers? How would they cross? I mean, kind of going right up to the bridge. I mean, how would that work? Help me understand how, from a safety perspective, how that would look.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Sarah. It's a question we receive a lot about people with roundabouts, in particular with walking and biking. There's a kind of perceived thing that roundabouts are less safe for people walking and biking, just because of, I guess, complexity of things. But there's really a lot of good safety benefits for people walking and biking at roundabouts. So when you do cross the street at a roundabout, you're kind of split. So in a typical intersection, when you cross the street, you cross all the lanes of traffic at the same time, right? You just have to go all the way across. The roundabout, one of the nice things about the roundabout is you actually only cross one direction of traffic at a time. You get to hang out in the median island if you're not comfortable, crossing the other way. And so that's important, if there's a lot of traffic coming from one side, you can at least make half your trip across at a time. So that's good. The other thing with roundabouts is that because people have to slow down to 15 to 20 miles per hour just because of the geometry of the roundabout, that means that there's less opportunity for, severe, pedestrian vehicle crashes with roundabouts, because people are going slow and they're, kind of paying attention to what they're doing more so than a traditional intersection. If you look in the options, at the option 2 there, you do see the lines for the crosswalks at the roundabout, both intersections on the west side there, and then essentially on the north intersection on the north side, and then on the south intersection on the south side. So you can kind of see where people would cross in those options. There is an option potentially to look at, adding a sidewalk to the east side of the bridge as well. Okay. Historically, there was a sidewalk on the existing bridge on the east side, but they removed it some time ago to provide an additional lane across the bridge. now would be a time to put that back in if we so desire to do so, so that you could kind of essentially complete the, all legs of the project area with sidewalks or trails. Does that answer your questions? Do you have anything specific?
Yeah,
more than
the
that?
other question about that was with bike, like, the little median where they would be in between the road. How many bikes can fit there? Can like two bikes fit in that area, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. Generally, because of the space constraints in this area, probably don't have more space in those median islands than having one bike width, so to speak. The median islands are usually, somewhere in the 6 to 8 feet wide or something like that, where those crossings are. You could, if you're biking with a number of people and you wanted to cross together or whatever, if there's nobody else in the crossing, you could do 2-3 bikes wide across the intersection or something like that. But there would be enough space to kind of have them all hang out in the median if they wanted to not cross both legs at the same time.
I just had heard from a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of families who have multiple kids kind of trying to get to the school there. So I wanted to make sure I understood that.
Mhm.
My other one is relates to the new bridge to the west. I know you talked about some of the environmental implications. I know I've had people reach out about that. Could you walk me through what those are, what we would do about those?
Yeah, the environmental stuff with the new bridge to the west, it's more just question marks than anything. We just don't know, because there's no road there right now. Are we going to find something we don't expect? That kind of thing. If you shave into the hillside a little bit, you don't quite always know what you're going to find there. This is, I guess, more unknowns than anything. We do live in the northern Midwest, and sometimes you find things like Indian burial mounds, or you find things like animal or plant species that are threatened or that kind of thing. I doubt that any of those are going to be present in the area that we're looking to cross there, because the area was already disturbed when I-94 went through. But you just never know quite what you're going to find with a new road alignment. So that's, I guess, the environmental impact of that option. And it would really just be limited probably to the south side of the I-94, so to speak, and not the north side so much.
Got it.
Anything else, Sarah, for other ones? Questions?
Well, the only other thing that stands out to me is with that new bridge to the west. Look, that's going to make it a lot easier with traffic and that kind of stuff, kind of through the construction process. But then I saw about moving forward, its ability to accommodate traffic is a little bit less than the roundabout option. So that is just something, to be mindful of.
Mhm. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, Dean, so here's a couple questions I have too. We'll start back up at roundabouts. So just in general, I'm feeling like 2 or 3 are better options than 1. And I know there's a lot of concern at the meeting I went to for the businesses, particularly Taco John's, and then also the Colonial Hills, the residences there. There was a lot of concern about the right of way there and maybe losing more land to that roundabout. In general, I like roundabouts, but my question on this one is, is there enough space to really put it in there? It seems like the one on the south would be easier, but it just feels very tight in that kind of Taco John's corner. So can you talk about that a little bit? I know it's a single lane, right? So it's not huge, but it just, as I look at the map, it just feels a little bit tight.
Yeah, no, I can understand where you're coming from there. So with the roundabouts are probably, that option is the one that has the most impact to those, that especially Taco John's into the Colonial Hills condo building there. The the right of way, we'd have to acquire right of way probably to build the roundabouts. However, it would really be limited to essentially just the corners of the properties right by the Coulee Road intersection there. We would have to build a retaining wall along Taco John's with this option. I did talk with Taco John's representatives after the meeting that we were at, Paul, about just the impacts of having to construct that retaining wall. That will probably require the drive-through lane to be shut down for say 5 days or something like that to get the retaining wall built, and then maybe a couple more days to put the curb back in and pave the drive-through lane again for them, that kind of thing. Obviously that's a concern for them. If we did move forward with this option, we probably would need to look at compensating them somehow for that loss of business kind of thing. So it's not insurmountable, but something that we'd have to consider with that. As far as the Colonial Hills side, that southeasterly most building is fairly close to the road right now. Let's see what am I saying about this? The sidewalk, how it's shown in that drawing on 11th Street, is within the right of way as it exists right now. So that part wouldn't be any further like west than what is there right now. It's just really that corner. And some things we could look to mitigate that would be, is there some sort of tall fence or something that we could put up there if we chose this option? Is there some way to make it not seem like the road is encroaching on their house? Something like that. I think we would need to figure out something in that particular corner for those residents there with that option. I think it's constructible, it's doable. It's essentially just how to allow those condo residents to live with after the construction's done, that kind of thing. That would be the most thing that we'd have to think about for detail wise.
Okay. And then I want to ask about option 3, because honestly, just in my own curiosity, option 3, I'm very curious about. I think for a lot of reasons, but I see it as a really interesting option for diverting some of that traffic. I see it as the least impactful on those businesses, why it would be built. So my curiosity is definitely perked with option 3 here. I have a question though so if you go Coulee, I'm looking at my screen here. So Coulee to, let's say, where the new bridge would come in, is there a light there, or what basically controls traffic from Coulee to that new bridge, that potential new bridge there?
Yeah, so what we're anticipating if this option were chosen is that the traffic using the new bridge, so call it the Coulee Crossover, that traffic, continuing on to Coulee Road down the hill towards downtown would not have a stop sign or a stoplight, and then the Coulee Road traffic coming from Taco John's to downtown would have a stop sign.
Yeah,
That
stop
makes
sign.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
there probably won't be enough traffic there to justify a traffic signal. At least initially, I guess we could revisit it too, down the line if it does have some issues there. But that's kind of what we anticipate right now.
Here's what I'm trying to wonder about. So if I'm coming up the hill from downtown, right?
Yep.
And I want to take a left onto Coulee. I don't want to cross 94.
Yep.
Do I just have a right of way there, or is there some kind of signal that I wait for there?
It would be similar to just taking a left turn at any, say for example, you're turning left from Coulee onto 17th Street right now, right? So right now there's no sign there, saying you have to yield to the person who's coming, towards you, if that makes sense. It'd be a similar deal. So the left turn would have to yield to somebody oncoming from across the bridge.
Okay, so here's my question is, bike and pedestrian traffic is under this sketch here. I'm assuming it's still open on the old bridge, but then it
Yes.
would be also open on the new bridge. Am I right about that?
Yeah, so we had a comment at the meeting that that if we did this option to the west, that this person felt more comfortable with taking the existing sidewalk off the old bridge. So that's certainly an option we could look at doing. I would suggest at this point just probably leaving the existing sidewalk on the old bridge if whoever wants to cross that or use that facility, because it's more a direct route, you know, for people who are
Mhm.
walking to say EP Rock Elementary School, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
if they feel comfortable doing that. But if you don't feel comfortable going across that 4-foot sidewalk across the bridge, you can, if option 3 are selected, you could go down to the new crossing and then go around on Coulee Road to get back to 11th as a maybe nicer crossing, so to speak.
Okay, and then here's what I'm trying to get at. So at Coulee and the new bridge, whatever we're calling that. If I'm coming up the hill again from downtown, I want to take a left onto Coulee. What I'm a little bit nervous about is I'm not hearing there's any traffic being regulated there. So I'm seeing a kid on a bike, you know, on the north side of Coulee trying to cross onto this bridge. And this guy's going to come up the hill. Like what's going to prevent that car from going right into that bike as they're trying to cross?
Yeah, that's a good question. Essentially, it's the same rules of the road that should apply everywhere where there's not a controlled movement, if that makes sense, right? Because any vehicle is supposed to yield to anybody who's crossing at a crosswalk, that kind of thing.
Right. I'm just
I know
wondering
that doesn't always happen, but
right.
you know, there are maybe some signage things that we could look at doing. We could definitely look at making that crosswalk as conspicuous as possible, because it probably will be a well-used crosswalk there across Coulee Road there.
Yeah, you might even need like a light deal like we were just talking on Summer and 17th. You might need something like that or something.
Yeah, we could look at
I was
doing
just
something like
curious
that.
about what the plan was for that because I'm not sure that's been. We have to maybe think about it a little bit more.
Sure.
I mean, Paul, you bring up a good point because the way that the grade of that new bridge is going to be, I mean, there's going to be a significant downslope there for
Yep.
kids traveling that direction, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I could see them flying through there without using their brakes. So we're going to have to keep that in the back of our minds how to mitigate that.
Yeah, that's something I think we have to put some thought in. I just think there's a real potential for safety hazard there.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say too, I initially, when I was thinking of this concept, had the path on the south and west side of the road, so to speak.
Mhm.
Our consultant put it on the north and east side. I mean, that location, which side that trail is on, is something that we could discuss further as well. Because if it's on the south and west side, then you wouldn't have that crossing there, so to speak, on the east leg of that new Coulee intersection, so to speak.
Right.
We could
But
cross them
they still have to cross Coulee at some
somewhere.
point.
At some
Yeah,
point.
yeah. But we could have them cross at a different location that may be a better spot,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah,
And
you could
then-
have them, like you said, you could have that trail on the south side. And as soon as they get across the bridge, they would have to, they'd come to a right angle. So they have to stop, cross Coulee Road, and then they continue up Coulee Road to 11th, or then they go left down the hill. So it actually makes them stop, at a refuge place and makes them come to a complete stop and look for traffic instead of just darting down if it stays where it's at. I get what you're saying, Dean.
Yeah, I think, you're hearing me. Okay, and then, so the long-term, what Sarah was talking about, the long-term traffic flow studies that you did, if I'm right, show with the new bridge, it's not quite as good of a traffic flow as it would be with the double roundabouts. But my question is, I know there's a possibility of doing a roundabout on the south, kind of that Crestview, Hagen area. Was the study you did as is on the format here, or did you run one with a roundabout at Crestview on the south there?
So the, like the comparison and stuff that we had sent over, that is assuming that the Crestview and Hagen intersection is still a traffic signal for option 3. I think though, I mean, maybe our consultants can answer this question better than I can right now, but I believe that the less traffic output, throughput, whatever you might say, with option 3 has to deal with the 11th and Coulee intersection, just because of the amount of different turning traffic there.
Yeah.
If we haven't expanded that intersection, I think that one becomes, we'll say, the bottleneck. I mean, it wouldn't be a bottleneck so much with that, bridge being built to the west, but
Okay.
be the most bottlenecked area, I think, of this entire area, into the future if we didn't upgrade it right now.
Okay. Then I have some other questions just about, I don't know if you can answer them, but my question with the option 3 is, so it's a federal highway, right? It's the interstate. So to build a complete new bridge, I think we'd have to get permission. We'd have to have probably the federal government sign off, I'm guessing. I don't know, the transportation agency, whatever, whoever handles that, the Wisconsin DOT, I'm guessing, would have to sign off. What I'm trying to get at is, what are the chances that they're going to do that, or what are the additional hurdles that we would have to cross to do that? Do we know? Do we kind of know what we're dealing with, or do we have a sense of the state or the feds would be like open to this, anything like that?
Yeah, that's great. Great point. So the interstate highway, even though it's a federal highway, interstate highways are managed by the states for the federal government. Essentially, the federal government has some role in making sure the states are doing a good job in overseeing their highways, but that's about it. I did talk with WISDOT's planning person for our region, just kind of, say, if we did build a bridge here, is that going to be a problem for WISDOT? And essentially, he didn't indicate that there is any problem with that. He said, for the reasons that we're even looking to do that bridge, makes a lot of sense. And also, it didn't sound like they would have too much hesitation with taking over ownership of that bridge after we constructed it as well.
And then,
so yeah,
they wouldn't
I
have
think
to
that,
would they have to
sorry.
shut down 94 at all, do you think, to build a new, or is that they have a way?
Yeah, so with any of these options, there would likely have to be a either shutdown of one side or the other, or both. Usually, my experience is more in Minnesota how they do this, but I would imagine it's the same in Wisconsin, is that they would do like a weekend shutdown to, say, demolish the existing bridge, or take down part of it or something like that, open it back up, for traffic for during the week, and then once they be placing the new beams for the bridge, they have to shut down the interstate to place those beams, because you can't have just beams dangling and on top of people that are driving by, if that makes sense. Actually building a new bridge to the west would be less impacts to 94, because you don't have to deal with removing an existing bridge, because that process of removing the bridge takes a closure of 94 to do that safely. So it'd be less impacts to 94 with that option.
Okay, and then the other thought I had is just that, so WISDOT's going to own the bridge either way. I mean, they own the bridge now, right? So what I'm thinking is, if you want option 3, at some point WISDOT, as the existing bridge deteriorates, they're going to have to, that's their bridge, so they're going to have to come in and do their own repairs, right? They're going to have to do it on their own dime. So part of me thinks that might be, a good deal for the city, having the state work on the 11th Street if we create this new one. That, I mean, the flip side is they're gonna take ownership anyway, so we're gonna do their work either way, I guess. But I'm just trying to figure out, in the long run, are we better off with kind of a brand new bridge, so to speak, right? And then in maybe 15 years, they got to redo that bridge, or 20 years, because structurally, it's going to get to that point. Then we have 2 really good bridges in the city, as opposed to 1. So I don't know. I guess one of the things that I'd like to see is, I don't know, Dean, if you can talk to the consultants and see if they could run a traffic simulator with the roundabout on the south side at Crestview, just to see if those numbers go up, because the numbers I read on the sheet do show that the double roundabout is the best for traffic flow, if I'm understanding it correctly. But I'm
Yep, you're
curious to
correct.
see if there was one on the south side of the new bridge, if that would again offer, I don't know, anything more than what we're seeing right now. So
And Paul, so traffic flow and safety on the roundabouts, although definitely impactful during the construction process. I did want to just ask the existing bridge that's there. So Paul, the meeting I was at, a resident made the exact same point you made about, maybe this was a better financial picture for the city and leaving the Hagen Street Bridge for the state. So that was brought up. But the existing bridge, somebody asked you the night that I was there about its safety. And at that time, you thought it was rating maybe in the 70s to 80s. I want to make sure that the existing structure that we have is really safe and that we won't run into any situations like our neighboring state has had.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I don't know the exact number of the sufficiency rating of the bridge. So bridges are all rated in a 1 to 100 scale, or a 0 to 100 scale. It's called sufficiency rating. And that is a composite of, the rating of the deck, the rating of the beams, the rating of the piers and underground structure. So essentially the entire bridge altogether. And so the last time the Hagen Street Bridge was rated, it was something like a 75 out of 100, which is not bad, not great, but the bridge is also 40 years old, so it's to be expected that it wouldn't be up 100 out of 100. You don't really start having real safety problems until a bridge condition gets into the, say, definitely below 50, but even 30s, 40s, something like that out of 100. Obviously, we try not to get bridges to that point. Usually they try to replace them before they get there, because the worse the condition of the bridge, the more likely it would be to fail. And we obviously don't want to do that. Based on a sufficiency rating of about 75, we would estimate that this bridge probably has, in the 15 to 20 years left in its life cycle. Generally, bridges of this type, last, say, 50, 60 years, plus or minus, depending on the conditions or whatever. So yeah, that would be, 10, 15, 20 years from now would be when the bridge would get to that point. But it is safe to go across, and they do inspect these bridges on, I think they inspect them every other year, I believe. Some critical bridges they inspect every year, say like the bridges over, I think they inspect the bridge over the St. Croix River every year, because obviously that's a really important one to make sure it's safe, because hundreds of thousands of vehicles use it a day. Yeah, they are staying on top of it to make sure that the existing bridge is safe, and it is. So far as I've been told and understand, it is safe for the foreseeable future.
Piggyback on that, we did do a Hagen Street traffic study, kind of. I don't know, Dean, were you even here when that happened? That was back in 2019. I'm looking back through it. And the bridge inspection back in 2018 indicated a sufficiency rating of an 86.2.
Okay.
So 4 years ago it was 86.2.
Okay. All right. So that's quite good. Would the other thing, and I really understand you want it to look aesthetically pleasing as well. And so I know with the addition of the West Bridge, that would be the first one that people would see. Would there be some aesthetic things done to this bridge as well, to the Hagen Street Bridge? Safety is far more important to me. I just want to be clear, but from a perspective.
Yeah, that would be something we probably would have to figure out, when we refine the details. There's probably not a lot that we could do. We could probably look into, I don't know if we do it with this project or work with WSDOT to figure out when they could do that, but like repaint the girders on the bottom, That's something that WSDOT does periodically anyway, so I don't know if that, it looks like the bridge is due for getting repainted again, so I don't know if they have it on the schedule or something like that already.
Okay.
There's really not a lot that you can do aesthetically to that bridge to make it a lot nicer. I mean, you could look at things like replacing the chain link fence on the top with like a more wrought iron fence looking kind of thing. Or you could look at, I don't know, trying to sandblast the rust off the concrete barrier. I don't know. There's things we could look at doing. I'm guessing they probably wouldn't qualify for funding with the federal government stuff, but you know, there are things that we could look at doing with that.
I have an additional question. Sarah, I'm sorry, were you done?
I'm done.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
finished.
Okay, so Dean, I'm looking, it's hard, a little bit hard to see on the sheet here for me. Again, talking option 3, okay, talking new bridge to the west. How many lanes is that bridge?
Yeah, so it is 2 travel lanes across the bridge with essentially a median. So the median would be mostly because you have a left turn lane on the north side of the bridge, and in order to not, you know, be narrowing and widening and all that sort of stuff, we just leave that same consistent width across the bridge. It also would be nice to have that space for, you know, snow storage in the winter time. We could kind of pile snow in the middle so that you're not flinging snow off the bridge or onto the path or that kind of thing. So essentially 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction with a median in the middle.
How wide is that median? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, could it possibly be 3 lanes if it was configured, you know, well? You know, could you have 2 lanes moving out, for example, north and 1 coming south? Again, I'm trying to look at ways that you could try to increase volume. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that. If there's that median just looks really big on my drawing here. I guess I don't know if that's the scale, but.
Yeah, so one problem with having 2 lanes coming north, we'll call it, towards downtown, is that once you get to the north side of the bridge, you have to merge them down right away, you know, that kind of thing. You've got that left turn lane kind of opposing what would be 2 lanes coming through, which might not be the greatest either. I would suggest if we looked at utilizing a space for a travel lane instead, that we would do it southbound, because that would be the way that people are climbing up the hill, so to speak. So if somebody is going slower, then somebody else can, you know, kind of pass them or something like that. That would require a little bit wider of an area on the south side of the bridge for the road when you're turning onto the existing cul-de-sac there, but not, you know, insurmountable by any means. So if we wanted to repurpose that space for another lane, that's probably the direction I'd go with it, rather than heading towards downtown.
Okay. And then the other question is there a way if we built the new one, we could build it wider?
Yeah, I know you've asked me this question before. Some of the constraints with that is that essentially once you get to the north side of the bridge, you have a lot of constraints with just, you know, the amount of right of way that's there, you know, with the apartment buildings there, the parking lots for the office buildings are there, that kind of thing. So if you built the bridge a lot wider, I don't know that you'd really be getting a lot of bang for your buck, because all those lanes would have to disappear once you get to the north side of the bridge.
Okay.
And also we would have to acquire more right of way to make that happen as well. It's not, you know, something that couldn't happen. I just don't know if I would do that right now. I mean, we could build the bridge in a way that it could be expandable in the future if we needed to do that. That's a common tactic for when we don't know exactly what traffic's going to be. We want to make sure that we're not taking away options in the future, you know, for being able to expand the bridge if we needed to. But that would be a very significant concern, would be the north side of the bridge if we added more lanes to the bridge.
Got it. Thank you, Dean. I think that's my questions here. Did you have anything else that you want to ask? And again, I don't think we need to solve it tonight. I think it's going to ultimately be a conversation with a larger group at council. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily wanting to put a motion on the table. I don't know, Sarah, if you are, but
I am comfortable waiting for us to discuss this as a large group
okay.
at Monday's meeting. I mean, it sounds like we're all of the opinion that the roundabout or the new bridge are the best options. And I do want to say, when this whole project came forward, I never even envisioned another bridge being an option. So thank you. That was really exciting to see.
It's very creative. Yeah, very creative.
That's all
Okay.
Dean's idea. He thought of that himself. That wasn't even our consultant, so all credit to Dean on that one.
Good job, Dean.
Good
Okay.
hire. Good hire.
Thanks.
It looks like we don't have any old business. We do have project updates. Anything that you guys want to talk about for project updates?
Just wanted to quickly say that we submitted a grant application for improving signals at Carmichael and Center and Carmichael and Hanley. I think we mentioned this in the past at this committee, but we did submit that application. We received some positive feedback from WSDOT. It kind of went back and forth with WSDOT, making sure that, you know, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and all that good stuff. So with this funding application, WSDOT does essentially a benefit cost analysis to, you know, make sure that what we're proposing is a good idea, that kind of thing. And you have to score at least a 1 to make it worth pursuing. 1 being the benefit exactly equals the cost. Any higher number is better. And the overall application scored a 30. So that tells you that there's a lot of potential benefit and not a lot of potential cost, which is it's a good thing for our chances of selection. So not gonna say that we're gonna get selected, because then I'll probably not get selected, but hearing good things from that is always a good thing. So submitted that application. I'll hear back in April for that one.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Any other project updates? Mike, you have anything? Good. We're doing good with snow plow and salt and all our winter stuff.
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, it's been a relatively quiet, knock on wood, season thus far. Obviously, we got dumped on early in the season, but I mean, it's been, and you're, you know, the snowfalls that we have gotten our little clipper system. So not a lot of angry phone calls this season. So yeah, it's been fine. Obviously, doesn't matter if it snows 4 inches or 1 inch, or, you know, we're still out there putting down salt for all our hills and stuff like that. So we're still going through material, and we're about a little over halfway through our allotment. So we're sitting pretty good for the rest of the season. So yeah, been good.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, moving on. Any communications for future items? And I see community composting. Sarah, I'm guessing that you wanted that on the next agenda.
Yes, I would love for that to be on there. So thank you. I have one other thing, if I could put it on there.
Sure.
Before I do that, I know I have mentioned it to Mike. I have heard from so many people downtown who have absolutely loved the Burton skating rink, and what a night and day difference that is. And so kudos. And I don't know if that's really something for Parks Department or that committee meeting, but I really wanted to make sure it was recognized here. So people are loving it. So thank you. I did just hear, yeah, good job. Good work on that. Please pass that on. I did just hear that through the federal government, they are doing $5 billion towards electric car chargers, charging stations throughout the United States. That will equate to 500,000 chargers. And I want to put that on our radar. I think that through the infrastructure bill as well, or a new component to it. So I would like us to talk about that.
Excellent.
And maybe even think about seeing if there's a way we could partner with our school district with that.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, definitely. Great item to talk about. Okay, I don't have anything off the top of my mind here. So Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Second, all in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Aye. Awesome.